Well, everyone, I've heard nothing but good things about this game, the Silent Hill 2 remake, and so I figured it was only appropriate that we check it out and give it a shot. And shout out to Bloober Team, the developers of this, who seemingly have pulled it off. The reviews have been really, really good, and they were a team that previously did some less than amazingly received games, notably they did Layers of Fear, of course, the original one all the way back in 2016. They recently did a re-release of it. They also did The Medium back in 2021, if you don't remember that one. It's the Game Pass exclusive for a little while, I think it was. I don't, maybe not, but either way, it was a Game Pass game that just wasn't particularly good. It was just the definition of a 7 out of 10. But this has apparently been received very, very well. And that's good because this is a game that a lot of people hold very, very dearly, and they needed to do it justice, and it seems like they did. Now, I'll be forwarding through some of this narrative stuff for the sake of this video, just so I don't spoil anything in case you want to play this yourself. But I will say that this, again, is a classic. So if somehow you've not had the story spoiled, or if you've never watched a Let's Play or anything, just do understand that there are things to be spoiled, and there's maybe things that you want to experience yourself. So maybe just be cautious of spoilers, but rest assured that I'm not going to be showing anything crazy in this video as we go through it, just in case you want to try it yourself. But I will say right off the bat, the vibes are here. They have retained, in my opinion, the feel of the original game, though to be clear, I am not overly familiar with the original game. I've watched Let's Plays, I've seen streamers try it, I have of course seen it mentioned in video essays or other reviews that point back to it, because it is a classic through and through. But I myself have never played it. I grew up in a very, very, let's just say maybe protective household, where the idea of playing video games growing up was already anathema. I mean, that was crazy, much less horror video games like this. I mean, that was such a foreign concept. It never, ever would have happened. But now as an adult, I can do what I want. So we're going to play it and have a good time. However, even with my little limited knowledge of the franchise and of the original game, I still think that they have managed to retain the same feeling. I recently was playing through the Until Dawn remake that they just put out a few days ago. And it feels like a lot of the time they changed the color schemes of scenes. A lot of scenes were cold and blue and dark. And then these new ones are at sunset, and they're bright and they're vivid and colorful. And it just misses the point of the original art direction. But here it seems like they really understood what was intended with the original art direction and the feelings they were going for, and they've maintained that, which is awesome to see. Right here, as we gain control of our leading man for the first time, you can see that they have actually managed to do a really good job with environments. And one of the main sticking points for a lot of people with Bloober Team games, which is the studio behind this, is that their animations usually were quite lacking. That has historically been the shortcoming for them. But they have seemingly redone a lot of that motion capture, a lot of those animations. They've put a lot of time and effort into it, which is awesome to see, because that was a concern a lot of people had going into this. And as you can see, as we move forward and we descend down into the valley, you're going to notice something pretty stark and clear, and that's the fog. The fog is one of the most iconic design elements of Silent Hill 2 that's been referenced a ton and pointed to a ton. And of course, it's common knowledge now that the only reason there was that heavy fog in the original game was because they were running on limited hardware. They were running on well, the PlayStation 2. They didn't have a whole lot of horsepower under the hood, as it were, to get that game going. And so to save on that, they put up really thick walls of fog to obscure distant objects and to allow them to crank the quality of nearby objects and achieve those goals that they had. And it was brilliant because it also just so happened to fit with the vibe of the game. It was one of those instances where the art direction worked in tandem with the hardware limitations of the time. And it's the same kind of thing as with Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, where that's running on a Nintendo Switch, a pretty weak console comparatively, And that art style was designed to make that game possible on the hardware that they were running on. Whereas running it on like a PlayStation 5 would have been much easier, and they could have gone for a much more like realistic art style. But instead they found an art style that worked with the hardware they had before them. And it's the same thing here. And what's fascinating is that they've actually managed to retain that same vibe here. Like, there is thick fog, and it does limit the line of sight a lot, but it actually looks like it belongs. It doesn't seem contrived. It doesn't seem like it's here because the developers are trying to hide distance stuff so they don't have to load it in. And, you know, it doesn't feel like that. It actually feels grounded, which I think is a masterful achievement, to be perfectly clear. I will also say the sound design so far is pretty remarkable, and the music, if you don't know the music in this game and how masterfully it's done, that's a whole other thing. There's entire like video essays dedicated to just praising the sound design and music in these Silent Hill games, and I mean, you can see why. Look at this. The smooth transition into cinematics. Ooh, baby. Now, you might notice the game looks as it's called bonita. And the reason it looks bonita, of course, is because we're running this, as you can see here, on a 4090. You would hope that it would look decent on a 4090. It's also interesting that for whatever reason, at least based on the default settings that I've messed around with a little bit, it does go back to 30 frames during cutscenes for whatever reason. It's far from the only game that does that. It's fine. It can be a little jarring to go between the two, but it's far from a deal breaker. But I mean, you can see the level of fidelity they're able to crank in this. I mean, I'm pretty impressed, because I've played other Bloober Team games. I've played Layers of Fear. I've played The Medium. And they're not historically like that impressive, especially whenever there's human faces on screen. It's always been a difficulty of theirs, but they've actually done a really, really solid job, which it's again, great to see. I mean, everybody, I think, at least I hope, was rooting for this to be good, because we should all want more good games and less bad games. And it seems like they've actually managed to pull it off. But oh yeah, no spoilers. So I'm going to skip on past this and we'll keep going. Now here you can see the fog is much heavier. This is much more like the PS2 fog you might recognize from that old footage of the game. And you can see like the water is also improved. They've done a pretty impressive job of modernizing this while retaining the same vibe and feel. I mean, they've always been good with like environments. That's always been a strength of Bloober Team, but they have managed to pull it together while retaining the art style and vibe of the original game. It's awesome. Now, the other thing I kind of wanted to mention and talk about with this game is the interesting sort of dissonance in the games industry right now, where it feels like a lot of us are frustrated by constant remakes and remasters, and how these amazingly talented teams are being assigned them because it's just a safe, easy cash grab, and it seems like nothing more. Then on the flip side, there's another group of people that get games like this and are ecstatic, and it's their game of the year. You know, last year we had Resident Evil 4 Remake that was a lot of people's game of the year. And so it feels like there's just two sides of the industry, some that are just totally fed up with this, and others that are excited to see some of their favorite games given a fresh coat of paint. And I find that, again, fascinating. But to me, I think it comes down to two things. Number one, I think it comes down to the game selection. Frankly, some games don't need remasters. Let's be honest, some of them really don't. Horizon Zero Dawn, I know some people are really excited for that remaster, whatever. I don't get it, man. Like, yeah, the characters in the remake, remaster, whatever, look a little bit less like anthropomorphized potatoes, but like they still kind of do. I just don't understand why we should be spending all of these millions and millions of dollars making these things when that effort and that money could go to more interesting creative ideas. You know, it's just, I just don't think that is a game that needs a remake. But on the flip side, you have something like this, which for a lot of people was just frankly not playable or easily accessible for modern audiences, for people that wanted to try it again. I know the term modern audience gets like, it's sort of a trigger word at this point. But what I mean by it is people that didn't play the game originally and might find the control scheme or the graphic standards or the limited availability of the actual game itself on various forms of hardware. That could be barriers to entry that prevents them from ever trying it themselves. And so making a remake like this brings it forward to the new audience. And because it's a remake and not just a remaster, it also modernizes a lot of the things that we've come to expect from games like this. I mean, for example, there was the recent remake of Dead Rising, and with that, they had modernized the shooting, because previously, whenever you wanted to shoot, you had to like scope the weapon and then use like the D-pad or the left stick, I forget which one, to aim the gun, and you couldn't like strafe while aiming. It was really, really bad and not at all tolerable for modern audiences that are used to standard control schemes for third-person games that have guns in them. And so they were able to modernize that and make it accessible to people, which I think is awesome. And that allows a lot of people to try the game for the first time. And so I think it's really important that the right game is chosen. And beyond that, I think the quality has to be really, really high. I think because there are some of these games where the quality's high, but the game choice was bad, like The Last of Us Part 1, where they did a great job remaking assets for that game, for example, but they charged a lot for it. And it was a game that just frankly didn't need a remake. So even though the quality level was high, it just wasn't needed. So people didn't find it to be a compelling offering. Or on the flip side, you might have a game that really needs a remake or a remaster or something, and then when it comes out, it's just totally broken, like the Mafia 2 remaster thing that they did years ago that was just a disaster when it launched. But remakes like this seem to thread the needle, similar to Mafia Definitive Edition for me, one of my favorite games of the last few years, because it just hit like every chord in my heart's song. I don't even know how it did it, but that remake was so transformative and so well done. It really was remarkable and deserves a ton of credit. If you've not tried that one, that is a remake of a game that desperately needed it, and they did a phenomenal job with it. They really did. But okay, right here, let's show you a little bit of environmental storytelling, okay? We have a flower shop, really nice and easy. They're established, celebrating 70 years. That's awesome. You can see the plants, of course, are dead. Everything's overgrown. It's very sad to see because you can tell a lot of people cared about it. But then what's this on the ground? Oh, it's just a little small splatter of blood. That's unnerving. That's strange. But it's something a lot of players might just quickly sprint past when they're running in the door, like just running straight past it. They might not even notice it if they run this way. But that should give you a little skeptical hippo eyes. I wonder what's going on. Ooh, a note. I wonder what the note says. Miss Cassandra, a customer came in today, ordered a mixed bouquet, red and white. Well, I tried to explain it's bad luck, but he couldn't decide on just one. He seemed a bit off, looked at me like I wasn't even there. Then he just left, said he'd book to pick them up later. I just wanted to let you know since I might be gone by then. Sorry, I'm reading slowly because it's been a while since I've had to read spaghetti, and I'm just trying to get back into it. I do think it's important to know how to read like semi-cursive or whatever you would call that. I think that was just good handwriting, but to me that's basically illegible. Uh-oh, I wonder what's through here. Ooh. It leads out, and then it leads to the dumpster. Strange. Through the wall. Something bad's in here. Uh-oh. But anyway, I'm going to continue playing for the rest of tonight, and I'm going to check in with all of you in the morning once I've put a number of hours in and I've seen what the rest of this remake has to offer. Like I said, I'm familiar with the game. I'm somebody that's kept in tune with it. Like I know the game. I just have never personally played through it myself. I've watched other people do it, but I've never actually done it myself. So I am excited to try it for myself, because there's, again, basically two groups of people. There's the people that have played this, know it dearly, and then there's the newbies like me who are coming in, looking at it with fresh eyes. It might be familiar with it, might be, you know, vaguely familiar with it, but that are looking to like try it for themselves the first time. Or there's the people that just have no exposure with it at all. And that I think is going to be really interesting, because it seems like the people that know and love this game really appreciate the remake. And so perhaps my perspective as somebody that knows the game and is familiar with the game but has not personally played it, maybe that's like you, and my perspective in a few hours will be more useful. I don't know, but I'm going to do that. I'm also not going to stand up because it is late at night and I'm not wearing pants under this desk, because this is my damn house and I can do what I want. So I will just cut the camera there and we will flash. That's a poor choice of words. I will fast forward to to part 2 of the video tomorrow morning. I'm bad at transitions. Jacob, do a transition. And boom, hooray, transition complete. So it is the day following. I actually played it this afternoon a good bit after we got off stream, played it last night, and I will stick to my guns in being spoiler free at least as much as possible. I'm still going to show footage from the first like 2 hours probably of the game, just so I have something to put on screen while we talk about this. But having gone through more of it now, I can say pretty confidently, this is like, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I will also say this is one of those games where it's pretty clear the developers want you to go in with as little hand holding as possible. What I mean is that this is one of those games that has environmental puzzles, and puzzles that are framed to the player by way of environmental storytelling. So it might be something as simple as a blood mark on a wall, or it could be something in the maps that you find, or it could be an object or a note that points over here to look for something over in that direction. And if you were going through this with a guide, frankly, I don't think you're going to have a lot of fun. I've seen some videos and some streamers that have been playing this and are kind of relying on chat to hold their hand through it. But frankly, I think that this is one of those games you really should go into media blackout. Don't look up anything, just take your time working through levels, finding stuff organically, and thinking to yourself, okay, if I need this key, where would this key be? Oh, well, this note mentioned something about this, and then this pointed me there, and you will have a much more interesting time with it. But beyond that, it's just, so far at least, a really solid recreation of the original game. That said, that does not mean it will be a perfect 10 out of 10 for you necessarily because other people have had an amazing time with it. This is one of the sort of leaps in logic or fallacies that a lot of people make when they are trying to choose which games to play. They'll see something like Baldur's Gate 3. Ooh, it got 10 out of 10. So therefore, if I play it, I will find it to be a 10 out of 10. And that's not actually how that works. It just means for people who like these kinds of games, it's a 10 out of 10 game. But if you are somebody that doesn't like Resident Evil, you don't like suspense thrillers, you don't like these kinds of weird, wacky, crazy horror games, you're just not going to like this. This plays very similarly to modern Resident Evil games and old school Resident Evil games because, of course, they're cut from the same cloth as you would expect. But if you don't like those games, nothing magical is going to happen here, okay? It's not like they've totally transformed what the game is. Part of the reason it's a 10 out of 10 for so many people who like the original is because it is faithful to the original. So I will say that if you like these kinds of games, it probably is a 9 or a 10 out of 10 for you. But if you don't like these kinds of games from the outset, I don't think it will magically change your mind on that. In the same way, like if you never liked From Software games, Elden Ring probably didn't magically change your mind on that. You probably still don't really like those kinds of games. It's because the score is specifically for fans of those types of games, if that makes sense. Beyond that, in terms of performance, I will say that the game, even with DLSS running, does have a good amount of choppiness when going through the town in the first couple of hours of the game. Granted, I do have everything cranked here, but there were multiple times where I'd be sitting at like 90 frames a second and then it plummets down into the 50s for half a second or so, and then it catches back up. Far from a big deal. It was never like disruptive or anything. It didn't occur during combat sequences or any sequences where I really need to be on my A game, but I will say that that is something I noticed. And the only other thing I have to point out in terms of performance is with the cutscenes being locked down at 30 frames. It can be really jarring to go from like 90 or 100 frames all the way down to 30, just in a smooth transition into a cutscene and then right back out and see the frame rate spike up again. This is something other people have spoken on as well. For example, here in the Steam community tab, there's discussions of getting it running properly for ultra wide monitors, fixing FOV, color fringing, stuff like that. And there is even already a modded fix to improving cutscene frame rates. So it basically just unlocks it for people, which is super cool. I mean, this is why you play on PC, because people will just do this within like a few hours of the game launching. It's amazing. But if you are interested in unlocking the frame rates or changing aspect ratios or fixing ultra wide support, things like that, there are solutions. It just takes some Googling. And who knows, maybe there will be official support for it later, and in a week or two we get official support. Seems like a pretty easy thing to unlock. I don't really know why they chose to do that to begin with, but nonetheless, there is a solution if you are interested. But all told, I'm having a great time, and I can see why people are so stoked on it. They really did a good job, and I got to give it to Bloober Team. They managed to totally surpass expectations. I mean, up until this point, they've really struggled to cross that like okay realm with their games, but this is the first time they've really broken out and hit it out of the park as far as I can tell. I still have to finish it, of course, but so far it seems like they really have done a phenomenal job. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but well done, Konami. I mean, I don't think any of us expected Konami to be like a winning company at the start of this year coming into this. Like, I was sure that they were going to find some way to turn this into like a gacha slot machine or something. I'm genuinely impressed. So hopefully this is start of sort of a resurgence of Konami as a big player in the industry, because again, competition is what makes this industry grow and thrive, and it's what pushes every studio to do better and better work. We should all be rooting for more amazing games, for more amazing publishers and developers, and I hope that this is the start of something even bigger and badder, and maybe this is the start of a renaissance of like survival thriller horror games. I would love to see that. And all told, I mean, I'm excited to keep playing as we get closer to Halloween. It came out at the perfect time. But let me know if you're going to be trying it in the comment section below. But with all that said, thank you for watching. I love you all desperately. You make my dreams reality every single day. Getting to do this for a living is ridiculous, and I owe it all to you guys for watching, liking, subscribing, watching my second channel, all of that good stuff. You all are amazing. Thank you very, very much. Never think I take it for granted. I love you. I'll see you in the next one. Hugs and kisses. Bye-bye.